Now I'll move on to Senator Milne.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to particularly ask Mr Varghese about the Prime Minister's visit to the meeting with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi with regard to Matthew Joyce and Marcus Lee, Australian citizens who had been convicted there. Did the Prime Minister's office request that Foreign Affairs set up the meeting, and who accompanied him to that meeting? Or did the request come from I want to know whether Foreign Affairs suggested or recommended to the Prime Minister that he take this action, or whether the Prime Minister's office requested the Department of Foreign Affairs to support and engage in that action.
I might ask Justin Brown, who is the First Assistant Secretary responsible for consular issues, to see if he can answer that question.
Justin Brown, First Assistant Secretary, Consular and Crisis Management Division. Senator, I think you asked two questions: who set up the meeting and who from DFAT attended the meeting. Is that? I'm right?
Asking whether the Prime Minister's office requested that DFAT set up the meeting and who went with regardless who went with the Prime Minister, yeah. Or alternatively, did the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade recommend to the Prime Minister that he take this action?
Senator, my recollection is that the meeting was scheduled at the direction of the Prime Minister's office and the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, and that the embassy in Abu Dhabi was asked to make the arrangements for the meeting. And again, I would like to check carefully, but my recollection is that the only DFAT officer present at the meeting was our ambassador to the UAE.
Thank you. So following from that, you would be aware Australian citizen Peter Greste is currently imprisoned in Cairo. Have you had any requests or direction from the Prime Minister's office to set up any meetings or take any action to support the release of Peter Greste in Cairo?
Senator, we are in regular contact with the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, and on some occasions the Prime Minister's office, to keep them informed of the developments in the Greste case. We've produced a significant amount of reporting on developments. Most recently, we have consulted the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet on a detailed strategy to make representations and advocate on behalf of Mr Greste, and that strategy is currently being implemented.
So I want to put on the record that the people I've talked to in his family and community are very grateful for the consular assistance that has been provided and to date. But my question related to specifically, your answer said there'd been regular contact, etc., but your answer implies it has all been from the department up to the Prime Minister's office. I wanted to ask specifically, has there been any direction from the Prime Minister's office to you to engage the Prime Minister in making representations in Egypt?
Senator, to this point, I don't have any recollection of a specific instruction from the Prime Minister's office as regards his potential involvement in this case. As you're aware, Mr Greste is currently facing judicial proceedings in Egypt. There is a question, therefore, as to, in practical terms, the most appropriate opportunity for head of government representations on his behalf. And I mentioned in response to your last question that we are developing, or have developed, and are now implementing a significant strategy, a multi-pronged strategy to deal with this case. And the issue of how and when the issue of possible head of government representations might be made is certainly part of that strategy.
Senator Milne, I think it's also relevant to remember that in relation to the Marcus Lee case, the Prime Minister was actually in Abu Dhabi. He was in Abu Dhabi on his way back to Australia from Europe. But the Prime Minister I'm advised, has no current plans to be visiting Egypt.
Thank you, Minister. But Prime Minister Abbott could speak out from Australia, as indeed John Kerry has from the United States. Could I ask specifically what other senior parliamentarians or politicians from around the world, government ministers in fact, have spoken out in relation to Peter Greste in support of his release?
You mean from other governments?
If I mean from other countries, yes.
Oh, well, you've mentioned the Secretary of State. There's also been comments I can recall from the UK Foreign Secretary, Mr Hague, and they've been very much focused on the importance of freedom of the media, which is certainly an issue that's been featured prominently in public statements by both Prime Minister Abbott and Foreign Minister Bishop.
Senator Milne, can I give you some more information in response to that question? The Foreign Minister, Ms Bishop, raised Mr Greste's case directly with the Egyptian Foreign Minister, Mr Nabil Fahmy, on the 28th of January, and she also raised Mr Greste's case with the Egyptian Ambassador, Mr Hassan El Lati, on the 16th of January. Australia's ambassador to Egypt, Dr King, met the Ministry of Justice in Egypt on the 22nd of January and the 10th of February. And Dr King met the Prosecutor General on the 30th of January and met the Ministry of the Interior on the 12th of February, and is continuing to maintain a close personal involvement in the case. So you can see, Senator, that at both the political level, at the foreign minister level, and at the diplomatic level, the government has been actively engaged in Mr Greste's case in making representations to the Egyptian authorities.
So what representations have been made subsequent to the court appearance? Prior to that, statements had been that we wanted basic standards of justice to apply and that the matter be handled fairly and expeditiously. Subsequent to the court appearance, it's fairly clear that it's not being handled fairly or expeditiously, and basic standards of justice are not being applied given the difficulty of Peter Greste from being able to assemble a defence case. So why has the Prime Minister or the Foreign Minister not spoken out subsequent to that court case where her conditions were clearly breached?
Well, I think I've just told you, Senator Milne, the Foreign Minister has been actively involved, including at a minister-to-minister level with the case, and the Australian Ambassador to Egypt, Dr King, has had a constant involvement, a constant and active involvement with the case. I might also add that I'm advised that we are drawing on our contacts with other governments which have influence and standing in Egypt to bring the case to their attention and to seek their advice in encouraging Egypt to bring Mr Greste's case to a satisfactory conclusion. It's not in Mr Greste's interests for us to be discussing the details of that engagement publicly. We've also welcomed the public remarks by both Senator Kerry and Mr Hague urging Mr Greste's release.
But I repeat again...
So as the Prime Minister might say, we're all on the team here, Senator Milne, in trying to get the best outcome for Mr Greste, and are taking all appropriate steps, both at a ministerial level, a diplomatic level, and through Australia's friends and allies, the United States, including in particular the United States and the United Kingdom.
But that hasn't included a statement subsequent to the court proceedings condemning the way that Peter Greste
Senator Milne,
was actually handled.
With all due respect, I think that obviously this is an important and delicate matter, and I say this with all due respect. Perhaps the judgment should be left to the professionals and the people who are actually dealing with agencies of or individuals within the Egyptian government to make their own judgments as to what is best done by private discussion and what is best done by public declarations.
And with all due respect, if it had been left to that on the case of Colin Russell, he'd still be in jail in Russia.
Well, I don't know that you can say that, Senator Milne, but anyway, I made my point.
Thank you. I want to go on to the case of John Short and ask specifically what action the department or the government has taken in relation to his being detained in North Korea.
Senator, as you're aware, we do not have diplomatic representation in North Korea. We have an arrangement with the Swedish Embassy in Pyongyang where it acts as our agent to pursue issues, including consular issues. We have therefore, through the Swedish ambassador in Pyongyang, submitted a formal request to the DPRK authorities seeking information on Mr Short's whereabouts, his medical condition, and requiring immediate consular access to him. We've yet to receive a reply to that request. We have, as is normal practice in such cases, sought advice and guidance and assistance from a number of other governments, particularly the United States, which has had a number of Christian missionaries in a similar detention in North Korea in the past. And we've also sought assistance from the UK, a number of other governments, to try and exert pressure on the DPRK authorities to respond to our request. Senator, I'm reluctant to go into too much detail, as you might appreciate. We have yet to hear from Mr Short. We do not know anything about the conditions in which he's been held. Further public comment could jeopardise our opportunities to secure his early release.
Okay, so I'll go back to Colin Russell for a moment. After Colin Russell was released, the Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, said that she may ask him to foot the bill for the government assistance provided in Russia, saying that it runs into tens of thousands of dollars. Did DFAT recommend to the Minister that steps be taken to recover the costs of assisting an Australian citizen held unjustly in Russia?
Senator, what the Foreign Minister said was that in light of Mr Russell's case, she would ask that the department, as part of its ongoing process of developing a consular strategy for the next 3 years, to look at the issue of whether it's viable to introduce a cost recovery element into our future approach to the delivery of consular services. And that consular strategy process, which has involved an extensive request for public submissions, is underway, and we will be providing the Minister with our initial advice on the elements of that strategy in the coming months.
So specifically, the Minister requested DFAT to look at a cost recovery strategy for consular assistance for Australian citizens overseas.
Just to be clear, Senator, what the Minister has asked that we do is look at the pros and cons of introducing some cost recovery elements as part of our consular strategy. So what we are being charged with doing is providing the Minister with advice on what is feasible and what is practical in a policy sense in this area.
And were any conditions, did the Minister suggest any parameters around the conditions that she would like to see imposed in terms of cost recovery?
She hasn't specified any conditions other than there is obviously a concern, which is a key factor behind the decision to launch this consular strategy process, is that there is a growing disparity between the expectations of the travelling public as regards consular assistance and the capacity of the department and our network of diplomatic posts to deliver consular services. So in order to ensure that we have a viable and sustainable consular service in the long term, we do need to look at ways in which we can address this question of public expectations. Cost recovery could be one of the elements that might assist in that regard, but it's at the moment one that we're currently assessing as part of the development of the strategy.
Thank you. I know other people are waiting to take questions in this. Thank you for that.